Our Stripes podcast. My name is Nene and I'm one of the co-founders alongside my esteemed founders, Hayden and Kama Davis. To find out more about what we do, just head over to wearestripes.org.uk. And today's podcast, we're going to be discussing allyship and what it really means to be an effective and authentic ally, especially in the light of all the statements that companies have put out during the past couple of weeks due to Black Lives Matter. So we thought we'd have a talk to some people who have actually put in the work, who actually care about being allies and to put the work in. So no further ado, I'm going to hand you over to my hosts, Hayden and Anne. Please introduce yourselves and our guests as well.
Hi, okay, so I'll start because I'm here now, sorry. Hi everybody, my name is Hayden, one of the co-founders of We Are Stripes and also work for the Arts Council as a social media strategist, trying to upskill the arts and culture sector, and that's fundamentally why I'm here. Look forward to speaking to both Simon and Amy today and really showcasing what it's like to be an ally and how that can really help the cause and the fight of what we're trying to get across with diversity and inclusion.
Awesome.
Hi, I'm Anne. I'm a visual effects producer and I'm also the central production manager at DNEG. I look after the production team in the TV department there, sort of looking at processes and how we sort of align better with the business. And again, I'm very passionate about allyship, and I think it's important to hear from those people like Simon and Amy. So Simon, I'll switch to you now to just introduce yourself, and then after that, Amy, you can introduce yourself, and then we can get straight into it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm Simon. I'm the by day I say by day. It sounds like I'm a vigilante. By day I work for Sony PlayStation or Sony Interactive Entertainment. Formerly worked at the Mill, working in visual effects specifically. I'm also the founder and director of Access VFX, which is an industry-led movement trying to kind of get some grassroots diversity achieved across visual effects, animation, and game sectors. So we've been established for about that. Yeah, I think it was September 2017 when we launched, and it's just grown and grown exponentially ever since. Really, it's become a bit of a beast, but, and rightly so. It means a lot to a lot of people. So that's me.
And I'm Amy, and I'm the head of talent at Framestore, and I do a lot of stuff on the side. So big member of Access VFX from the start, also founding member of the Next Gen Skills Academy. I chair the UK Screen Alliance's Skills Working Group. I've helped to implement apprenticeships in visual effects, and I'm also currently helping to implement T-levels for the media as well. So lots of experience with skills and education. So
amazing. I guess I will start first, and then Hayden can come in later on. But I guess looking at what allyship means, I was kind of looking at the definition earlier. An ally is someone who is on your side. An ally is someone who's cooperating with you to achieve a purpose or for a common benefit. And I think because you both sort of really show up for the community, you've spoken a lot about inclusion. I wanted to know why you, Simon and Amy, are so passionate about inclusion and about showing up. So that's my first question. Why are you both so passionate about inclusion and showing up?
Do you want to go first, Amy? Because I'm always chomping at the bit. I'll let you.
So my reasons are actually twofold and actually quite personal originally. So when I was at school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I just sort of did what everyone expected of me. And of course I was lucky. I had opportunity, and I had people willing me on to go and do things, but I still didn't know what I wanted to do. And I fell into this industry completely by accident, only to discover that I loved it and it was giving me more opportunity and it gave me a sense of belonging. And I just thought, if I stumbled across that with all of the doors that were open for me and all of the opportunity that I had, how on earth is anyone supposed to find it who didn't have all of those opportunities and all of those doors open for them? Because I didn't end up here on purpose, so how on earth is anyone else? So I didn't want my experience to be anyone else's experience, number one. I wanted to help people have a better experience of trying to find their way into the things that they loved. But also, like I said, this industry has always given me this real sense of belonging and like I'm in the right place, and like most of the time, enjoy going to work every day, and I want other people to feel the same, and nothing makes me feel worse than when I hear a story that someone hasn't had that experience of the industry. And so I want to do whatever I can to make that everyone else's experience, because that's important to me. So
amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, my disclaimer for attending this this podcast recording is, you know, I struggle with the word ally sometimes. Like I've never positioned myself in inverted commas as an ally necessarily. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned that definition, Anne, around collaboration, because for me, the work, you know, whether it be with Actors VFX or the work I've done previously in different roles, it's always been about the work. It's always been about, I've always loved on a personal level, just meeting, not just working with, but meeting people who don't share the same lived experience as me, you know. And this isn't just about kind of white privilege, but it's about just difference. And I've always been attracted to difference. I mean, I'm not going to talk to you about my private life, but you know, my wife is Mauritian Indian. We have a mixed race son, and I enjoy the fruits of that difference, if that makes sense. You'll kill me for talking about my son, but I wanted to put this claim I wanted to put out there is I'm not going to drop any, I think, thought leadership kind of knowledge bombs here, and I've purposely not really prepared for this either. I just wanted to have hopefully a real conversation. But for me, it's about showing up. It's about getting the work done. And visibility. I mean, one thing I quite like about this episode, looking around the squares here, it's a visual effects special. I wasn't prepared for that, and it says a lot about the community that Amy references. Is, you know, I fell into the visual effects, games and animation industry completely by osmosis, like a lot of people do. You start working in a job you don't necessarily want to do. I started out in HR, it wasn't in the plan, and then you go through this kind of osmosis into what you do now. And when I landed in visual effects, the brevity of careers that were available that not everybody's getting access to for whatever reason. And you know, we wanted to change that. I mean, there's a whole other conversation about when we set Actors VFX up, where for me, there was no conversations around race at all. And it did start with that for me. I mean, it was the UK Screen Survey. Do you remember, Amy, that meeting where I think Claire Anderson, the head of talent at the time, said, "Oh, Simon, you should present what we're doing at the Mill." And I remember there was a conversation around gender, and it was a very easy conversation to have, right? And I'm not you know, dispelling any issues around gender equality. But then when you got to the race deck, and you can imagine what that bar chart looked like, there wasn't enough conversation about that for me. And I just wanted to have that uncomfortable conversation. And one thing I've always been proud of is I've always been willing to not overthink my ego, just call it as I see it, and challenge people. But I guess coming back to your original question, Anne, is it's just about the work. It's always been about the work for me. I've never positioned myself as any kind of ally, as much as I like the word, and you know, we're all friends here. It's about the work, and it's about just spreading. I always call it about casting that net further than we do, whether it's TV, any sector really. So that was my ramble.
But just to kind of like just to follow up just on what you just said, Simon, I think it's really key that you said that it's not something that you use to kind of like, oh, look at me, I'm an ally, etc. And that goes back to that whole authenticity thing, because you'll be amazed at how many people use D&I as a way of just showcasing themselves. Unfortunately, that is not a race thing. It's a human condition thing. It's a human nature thing. You know, if there's a place that people can get some sort of credibility, they would use it. And it's one of the reasons why we're having this podcast, because as I mentioned at the start, the amount of companies that came out with their statements on Instagram and their stuff on LinkedIn is like, we do this, that, and the other. And it's like, but we've spoken to you and there was not enough budget, or it wasn't a high enough priority. So it kind of like, one, it looks like you're essentially straight up lying, or you're just talking about this just so that you can keep your credibility. So again, it's one of the reasons why we're talking to you, because we know that you do it out of the right heart, basically. The reasons that you're doing it are correct. And it's not just about being showy and look at me, you actually care about the community and about the work.
If you're doing it right, people shouldn't see you at all. You know, that's the whole point. That the people that you're opening doors for and making opportunities for go on and do amazing shit. That's proof that you're doing your job, not you standing on a platform going, "Aren't I awesome?" You know, like if you're starting from that point of view, if you're starting from the point, I think one of the questions you put in the sort of pre-thing was, you know, how can people become an ally? And I think if that's the question you're asking, You've already failed. How can I become an ally? Wrong question. Absolutely wrong question. How can I support somebody else to achieve their potential?
Yeah.
It's about them. It's not about you.
That is awesome.
At all.
That is awesome. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
that is brilliant. I think, Amy, how would you build on that? What kind of tips would you say then that people can take to actually support somebody? I mean, obviously, again, in an organization such as where you were, for example, obviously there's a lot of people and it's a big place and there's lots of hierarchy. So how does someone just go about that in the first place? Like the small steps that someone can take to help somebody else?
Okay, well, I'm going to steal your thunder, Simon, because I'm going to start with become a mentor through Access VFX. Number one. There we go. Number one thing you can do, sign up to be an Access VFX mentor. And I've had huge success with that at Framestore, as Simon will attest to. We've recently signed up another 50 people at Framestore because people were asking me exactly that. What small step can I take? What can I do? And I'm like, be a mentor, number one. But you can also mentor people internally as well. You know, if a new person starts in your team, be they an apprentice or a junior or whatever, you can offer them help. That's mentoring. That's a really great way to help someone else. The other thing we're encouraging everyone to do at Framestore is go back to your own school or go to your kids' school or go to your local school that's down the road from your house or whatever and give a presentation for the children. You know, I always say, yes, okay, in a school of however many thousand kids, you're not going to convert them all. But if one kid walks out of that room thinking, my dreams aren't stupid and I can achieve them, then that's what I'm doing as far as I'm concerned. You know, small seeds, big things grow, right? So yeah, all of these things are little steps you can take that help other people to achieve what they're capable of. Simon, do you want to talk about the animation summer school? Because I feel like that's another really simple concept that actually really helps people.
Yeah, I mean, that was one of my favourite events that we ran last year. So it kicked off where we did an event at Escape Studios for 3 days. We took over the whole campus and it was targeting parents and families across the board. And and it was a whole suite of interactive workshops, learning software skills. And for me, it was always about action. Like everything we've done with Access has always been around what are we doing, and are we doing it kind of to make ourselves look good and be a bit backslappy? Or are we doing it where people actually leave this with skills, with mentors, with something they can take away? So there's a life after the event. And that's what we did with the summer school. And that's what we do with the mentoring program and all of that. I mean, the mentoring program is tagged onto everything, as Amy said, because it's the one call to action you can tag onto any event. Even if it is a panel discussion, you just chuck it in there and there's something there for you if you need it. But the summer school was great. We had so many powerful, it's the first time we did a proper survey of the people that attended. And the amount of people, particularly young black kids who came along, who told their parents who came with them that they didn't think they'd see anybody like them there. Yeah. And just to see somebody like them there, not just the audience, but the people presenting, was huge. And the socioeconomic diversity that we attracted. And actually, we've taken that to the next level with the Summer of Animation event that's running right now, which is an online version of the summer school with tutorials and talks from people like Andrew Gordon, who's like a Pixar legend, through to Alfie, who's like a 2D. We've got a Framestore one on rigging. Like all the content's there that you would have got if you turned up physically. We have this even more wider reach because nobody's paying for a train ticket, you know. So as long as you can see something on a device, because I don't want to assume that everybody can look at a screen or can afford that. But the reach of that's been incredible, and it's geared around a competition. If you want to check it out, it's summerofanimation.com. We've got the URL. It's a separate website that sits next to the Access VFX site. But it's worth going on there just to look at the tutorials because the content's incredible. And if you like that, sign up and get a mentor and ask questions because we're always looking for more. And that's mentees or mentors. So it's always been about giving back, really. And I think to Amy's point, it's about, you know, putting aside, to your question, Hayden, it's about putting aside, you know, forgetting about what people think of you, you know, being quite bold. I'm shameless about the stuff that I put out, but going beyond like social media. There's so much noise on social media.
Yeah.
So much noise. And it's not, I'm not using this podcast to have a rant, but it's like, what are you doing? It's great. It's that quote you put on Instagram is lovely, but where's it going? What are you doing with it? And that's always been my frustration. That's why I kind of don't play that game. Yeah, there'll be people listening to this who know that I'm a bit of a cheerleader on LinkedIn, but you have to be because, you know, but the flip side of that is nobody's getting a salary from Access VFX. The amount of emails I get from companies going, we can boost your social media presence, we can make you more commercial. I'm like, mate, nobody's commanding a salary here. And to Amy's point, it's about the stories. It's about the connection. You know, when I hear that a young kid comes on, there's a young lad who came to the first We Are Stripes Industry Connect. You know, Hayden, you were there as well. Remember?
Yeah.
I was on the board back then, man. But yeah, and there was a young lad. I remember, Nene, you put us in touch with a mum. I'm not going to mention any names, obviously, but a mum, he said, can I bring my kid along? And we were like, yeah, totally. And he was an aspiring animator, and he met with Michael Morgan, who was on the last pod as well, the BAME Industry Connects, and he's now got his first break. You know, he's getting work experience and placement sorted, and that to me is like, that's worth it. If I'm quantifying any measurement, that'd be it, and that'd be why we do what we do. It's just helping people out, really, and that, you know, that for me, that massive event with all the money we poured into it and all the people's time, that one kid was worth it, you know, and that goes for every single event, to Amy's point earlier.
That's so awesome. I think one of what I'm hearing, and this common thread between what you're saying and what Amy's saying, you know, there's inclusion is really about compassion and understanding. You know, like Amy said, if one person benefits from this, then it's all worth it. If 100 people come together to make one person better, it's really, you know, it's worth it. It's like, yes, we've achieved something. But I think a lot of allies want to be the savior of you. You know, they want to be the one that says, I have put you on this to put me on a higher pedestal. And so how do we differentiate that? How do we become just genuine allies that really just want to be inclusive of everyone without trying to be the savior, without saying, you stay here, I want to make myself look good, but I'll give you something. You know, how do we really and it really is about inclusion, but how do we not become saviors, and how do we become genuine allies? Simon, you can go first.
Yeah, go on, Simon.
I just wanted to say, I mentioned ego earlier. So there's something about kind of everything that I can only speak personally, that I do publicly. In the back of my mind, it's always about, is this going to be seen as being a bit, you know, self-promoting, or is there a heart to it, and is there an action? And if there's an action there, then I'll put it out. But I think it's not as simple as, but it's part of it is to keep your ego in check. Because if it starts to become about an ego machine, if it starts to become, because I could very easily go around and really dine out on the founder. Like I'm not really a fan of the tag, if I'm honest, founder and director. I could go all out on that. I could, you know, literally dine out on that for years, and that would be wrong, right? So I don't think. I mean, you guys can be the judge, but for me, that's my rule of thumb. If this is me going a bit OTT. Like if I go out and shout about the mentoring platform, or if I shout about an event, or or promote an event, that feels right. But if it's anything other than that, like the only thing we kind of put out that was a bit, I'm not going to say throwaway, but you know, when Black Lives Matter came to the fore again this year, recently, and we put out our kind of stance. That, you know, we caveated it with, we've been here since day one, kind of thing. But there was no real action. But that felt right because it was about solidarity. That's the only time we've ever put out a quote on any socials in the last 3+ years.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's good for people who have been there, who've been in the trenches, who've been advocates for a sustained period of time. I think it's good for them to also to be proud of that, be able to stand on that mirror and say, look, I'm not. It's not a boastful thing, but it's a case of you're showcasing that I'm genuine about my intentions, and I think that's where it comes down to. I think when you're a genuine person and your intentions are pure, that will in the long term that will shine through, I think.
Great.
Yeah. Coming back to Anne's point, I think you make the point really well, Anne, that there's this notion out there at the moment that success is finite, and therefore I have to apportion it, right? And so if I'm going to help you be successful, that means I have to give you a piece of my pie, and that it's just a nonsense. It's like success isn't finite. Because you're successful doesn't mean I can't be successful, or vice versa. You're not taking anything away from me. I saw a really great analogy on Instagram today that said, just because a carrot is also called a vegetable doesn't mean a broccoli is any less of a vegetable. I think that's a really good analogy, right? The carrot doesn't make the broccoli any less broccoli, or vice versa. You know, they're both equal vegetables. And I think that's exactly it. You know, me helping someone else be successful doesn't take anything away from me. And it doesn't need to raise me up or lower me or anything. It doesn't need to change anything about me. It's just me helping someone else be successful, and that's worth doing, you know?
Yeah, it's almost about like doing it's less about doing what's right, because you know, it comes back to the backslappy thing. We're doing it for the greater good, and doing what's necessary. It's kind of like right versus we have to do this. You know, this has been going on. I mean, you know, Amy said it earlier, like, you know, the success of Access VFX is that Access VFX doesn't exist. Like, we don't have to bang this drum.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it could exist, just about sharing opportunity, but in terms of why it was set up in the first place, it doesn't need to exist if that's the case. But it's about that. It comes back to, I always keep saying, it comes back to work. It comes back to what are we doing? And for me, it's about the different perspectives and creativity. You know, we work in the creativity business. And you can't have creativity without those differences of opinion. You can't sit in an echo chamber, because the work becomes boring and you go out of business. It's as simple as that. But yeah, just wanted to throw that in.
It's a really interesting point that you brought up, Amy, because I personally firsthand have seen that. And if I'm honest, I don't quite understand it. That whole sort of, if I raise someone up, then it's going to lessen me, or that whole kind of feeling of there's not enough to kind of go around. It's something that I've seen working in the D&I space for a long time. How do you kind of combat that? Because isn't that something that's really quite an internal issue, as in a very individual internal issue?
Yeah, it is. But I think you have to. I think it's about having an environment where people feel like achievement is the norm. I guess that's the thing. I think if it feels like everyone is encouraged to be their best, and everyone is encouraged to achieve their full potential, then there's no reason to feel like you're going to lose out. You know, I think that's the thing. I think it's one of the tricky things with D&I, isn't it? Is that you say, okay, we're going to set up a women's network, or we're going to set up a BAME network, or whatever, and the people who don't fall into that category go, well, what about us? And that's a sign that you've got something wrong with your culture. Actually, it's not a sign that there's anything wrong with those people. It's a sign that your culture isn't set up to say everyone has the ability and the right and the support to achieve. Because if anyone feels like they're getting left behind for any reason, right or wrong, your culture's not right. And so for me, I think the only way you can combat what you were saying, Nene, this sense of, well, I can't help that person because it might take something away from me, is you've actually got to change the culture. And that's a big education piece. It's also building trust in your staff as well. I think that's a breakdown of trust, isn't it? If I don't feel I can help someone else at work, then I don't trust my employer, or I don't trust my team, or I don't trust my supervisor. I don't trust somebody if that's how I feel. So yeah, I think there's a big piece of work there to do on education across the board.
Yeah, 100%.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just gonna say, when you mentioned trust, it's such a key thing about building a relationship, isn't it? Even just with allies or with colleagues. And it's when that trust breaks down in any sector, whether it's, you know, in HR or, like you said, with the supervisor and the artist, it's really hard to kind of get that back. And, you know, just looking at, you know, you guys are really great allies, but I actually wonder, do we have enough allies in the industry, you know, in companies? And I mean, I'm wrestling with it myself. I don't think that we actually do, because there is so much mistrust in the industry and in different sectors, in companies as well. So that's another thing of education as well, I guess, Amy, to your point, that we have to work on. Go ahead, Hayden. Sorry.
Well, so obviously in today's age, we do work in environments where Black employees or Black colleagues, and or even colleagues from any other type of ethnicity, can sometimes feel that they're held back or stopped, or because of racial issues, the skin of the color, their religion, etc. How can allies actually step up in that situation? What kind of steps can be taken, or what kind of steps maybe have you taken, if relevant, to how to showcase, look, we're going to try and put a stop to this, or at least help that person out?
Oh, you're on mute, Simon.
I'm trying to have good Zoom practice because I've got the door open. There's lots of kiddies outside. I think that it's about the culture piece. So it'd be very easy for me to sit here and say, go to HR or go to a trusted colleague, or you speak to your manager. But I know that there's often barriers associated with that as well. I think there's something in incorporating decent training within companies around what to do, because there's so many different ways to kind of whistleblow and address any kind of racial or any injustice, really. It's about finding a way to get it on, let's say it be a performance review, getting it on radar. And again, coming back to having a level of boldness and having a level of courage to speak up, but having permission to do so. Because again, it comes back to the culture piece. You need to have it embedded in policies, and it's the hard work. It's the strategies, learning and development solutions, making sure that everything's fully inclusive anyway, not just targeting, having unconscious bias training just for the management team, because that's a start, but it doesn't win the battle. So I think there's something in the permission piece. It's about, there's a vehicle for this, and if it doesn't take seriously, then there'll be repercussions for the people that you've raised it with. Does that make sense? So there's an answer in there somewhere, Hayden, but I didn't want to sit here and just say, speak to your HR manager. Nothing against HR.
Yeah.
I'm old HR, so
No, I think that makes perfect sense, and it outlines a few steps that people can take as well, because I think that is one of the biggest issues, that you find that it's the steps. It's the idea of feeling alone and feeling like you're scared to step out and step in front of a bullet, I suppose. So if the organizations can start thinking about, how do we set up those processes? How do we start to strategically change how our culture is applied to our staff? I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think it's also, if you're a person in your organization who you know you do have a voice in whatever role you happen to be in, I think it's about paying more attention to what you hear. Because I'll give you an example. I was in a meeting that was about something completely different, and one of my Black colleagues said something to someone else that was a sort of in passing statement. It wasn't intended to be taken any further. It was just an in passing statement about the fact that we'd had a recent staff presentation and they didn't see anyone like them presenting, right? And it wasn't to be done. They were just making a comment to someone. But I was listening. And the next time I had a meeting with our CEO, I said, by the way, I want you to know that I overheard this statement, and I think it's something you should be aware of. Because I had the ability to talk to our CEO. I had a voice with him, and this person hadn't said to me, I want this raised with anyone or anything. And I obviously didn't say their name or anything. I just said, this is something I've heard. And I think a lot of that happens. You will hear things, and sometimes people just, because it isn't brought to them as an issue, they just think, oh, well, they clearly don't want anything done about that. And it's like, no, if you hear something that you think no one should feel like that, then use your voice and go and do something about it. You don't have to drop that person in it. You don't have to name them. You don't even have to say what context you heard it in. You can just say, I've heard this and it bothers me. And I think that's something really powerful you can do if you are someone who has a voice in these scenarios, to help people who feel like they're stuck or they're not getting opportunities or whatever, because you'll hear them moan about that. You'll be sitting there and they'll be talking to the person sitting next to them or whatever. You'll hear it and you can do something about it.
And so, I have a similar example personally, actually, at work, because this was, I think, early in the year. I sent an email to, an email alias, And I thought it was a select group of people in that alias. And it was about, you know, delivering a certain piece of work. And someone had emailed my boss to say, you know, something I worded in the email wasn't right. And that person took it personally. And, you know, my boss could have done two things. He could have just said, forget it. Or he could have just, you know, maybe told me off. But he actually called me over and he said, oh, did you send this email? Someone didn't really like it, but it's cool. I know you didn't mean that. I will reply to them and I'll explain to them what you meant. It was okay. And I really felt bad, but I also felt that, no, this person actually has my back. Like my boss I have a great relationship with him, but he actually said, it's cool. I will explain. So he's not really putting me back in the firing line. He's actually just, and that is allyship, you know? It's like, it's cool. I understand. I will take care of it for you. I've got you. And even though I felt bad, he still just said, no, it's cool. You know, so for me, it's like that. Using your voice is so important on both sides, you know, speaking up and also speaking for people is such an important thing. So yeah, thanks for sharing that, Amy.
Yeah.
That also shows again that the power of trust and that real relationship, because people, we're still all people, we'll still have feelings, we still all have emotions, and when you feel that someone is genuine and their intent is pure, even if there's something negative towards you, you can take it and you can understand that their intent comes from a good place. So if you are an ally, go out there and try and make those genuine connections. Like we said, we're all human, we all relate. There'll be something we relate to. To try and make those genuine connections. And it doesn't have, you don't necessarily mean you have to go out with them or go and have a drink with them or have lunch with them, but it's just about those real connections when you're meeting somebody and you can relate on the subject matter that makes you trust each other and gain each other's respect.
It's about having those meaningful exchanges, isn't it? It's and comes back to authenticity as well, and kind of giving a shit, like caring about. It's like any relationship, isn't it? You invest in it or you don't. If it's this kind of going through the motions, kind of tick box, you know, if something gets flagged, then nothing's going to happen. But you know, it's got to come from a real place. Like you say, you don't have to go to the nth degree, and you end up, you know, I don't know, going to a barbecue at their house on a Saturday or whatever. You know, it's about genuine, meaningful exchanges, you know, wherever it is.
But it's also accepting that trust isn't built overnight as well. I think a lot of people come into this and go, but I put a thing out on my social media that says that I, you know, think that you're equal to me, so why don't you trust me? So it takes a bit more than that to build trust, you know, especially with people who historically have had no reason to trust you, you know, so yeah, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. You've got to turn up. So it comes back to Simon's point. You've got to do the work. You've got to turn up again and again and again. That's when you get trust. You don't get trust for turning up once.
Yeah,
exactly. And that happens a lot.
Yeah. Especially when everyone is talking about it. As I said before, it then becomes about credibility as opposed to actually doing the work, which is my kind of like bugbear with it. And I'm glad both of you, Simon and Amy, mentioned that it's not just something that's for HR. It's something that should permeate the whole of the company and the company culture. But I think what we do like about the two of you is that both of you are in senior positions in senior leadership, and that whole sort of care and, you know, wanting and compassion, as it were, because that's essentially what it is coming across. And we would be keen to see more people in leadership like yourself who actually care. It's actually caring. It's not just caring about D&I per se. It's caring about the people who are underneath them. That's basically it. It sounds so simplified. We know it's not this simple, but that's the crux of the matter, basically, isn't it?
It should be, though. Why is it not simple to care about other people? I don't understand why that isn't simple. I really don't.
Same.
Whenever I talked about initiatives, and I'm not going to name any companies, but I'm sick of hearing yes, but it's got to be the right person for the job. They've got to be the best. And it's like, what are you saying? Of course that's the case. But it's loaded, isn't it? You know, it's like, no, I mean, that's not an argument against an inclusion initiative, you know, or an equal opportunities initiative. But it must be about the most, anyway, sorry. I promised I wouldn't rant on this.
That's all right, Simon. It's all right. It's all right.
Yeah, I don't have to sit hearing that. Yeah, anyway, sorry.
That's all right. And do you want to continue?
I guess just looking at sort of wrapping, I mean, you guys, again, if we haven't said it, thank you for being allies. You know, thank you for sort of showing up constantly. You guys are really, I take my hat off to you guys. You know, and again, it's like you do the work and it doesn't need to be broadcast or anything like that. It's just, it is what you do. It is who you are. It does come from a genuine place. And that's where trust is built, when you realize that it comes from a genuine place. I mean, I guess if you were going to say sort of like one thing to the potential allies out there, or the allies who are actually doing it and finding it really difficult now, because I don't know if this situation has actually made some allies shrink back. You know, some people want to be like, I shouldn't really say too much now because some people, perception is a very, very huge thing for us. You know, as human beings, we don't want to be perceived in the wrong way. And it takes a lot of growth to kind of see yourself and go, no, I'm actually going to show up because it's hard, you know, because no one else is doing it. And I guess, you know, if you guys had one thing to say to those potential allies out there, or those who are finding it hard, you know, to just will them to keep on going and to keep trying even when it's hard, what would you say to them? Like what examples or what stumbling blocks have you come across that you have actually overcome?
I think it's personally, I mean, I wish I had this kind of, in the last, well, probably 5 years, since I turned 40, giving away my age now, but since I turned 40, I've really stopped caring about what people think of me.
Yeah, it happens at that age, you know.
There is a tendency of overthinking stuff, whether you sign a pledge or you do the work or you become a mentor, or you shout about stuff on socials. I used to worry about people's perception, you know, regardless of where that would come from. And then I've now realized that that's all bullshit, and actually it doesn't matter what you know, and I'm using the example of when I was at the mill. You know, people used to call me the PC police. I remember being in the lift with somebody, and the producer, and I won't mention his name, but he said, "Son, you're going to heaven, aren't you?" I'm not even religious, but you know, it's like, I'm not doing this to go to heaven. I didn't get into it. I was like, yeah, you know, banter. But from that day on, I thought I started calling. I owned the PC. I was the PC police, and I thought, you know what, that's going to be me now, and I'm going to own it. And no different to my training workshops, where I'm aware of my own. I've mentioned it before at our events, then haven't I? I own my cheesiness. Like I don't. Yeah, remember the Industry Connect where I said, you'll know the talent table because they're the only white people in the room. And the people kind of gasped a bit, and
everyone's like, "Yeah,
it's
yes,
true."
I remember that, but it was true. It was true.
Put a name on one of those tables as well. You know, remember it well. But yeah, I think it's kind of just getting over. It comes back to the ego thing. Get over your own bullshit and start thinking about why you're in this in the first place. And for me, the thing that keeps me going is all the stories, all the people who say, I mean, there was somebody on Twitter who said this tweet changed my life. You know, it's like an event we did in Sunderland during the Access. You remember that one? It was Access Effects Month, and what a lovely note to say. You know, shared this tweet, which was like, come to an event in Sunderland, but that was the event that now has led her off to her career. And I mean, there's loads of examples where people cite. We're this is an advert for Access Effects, but we're three and a bit years in, and there are so many great examples where people are now working in incredible creative careers because we were the kind of catalyst for that. So that keeps me going, and it comes back to the work, and it comes back to what we mean to people, and that's what keeps me going. Because Amy and I were chatting before this, and I was like, I wasn't saying I was going to quit, but there were days where I'm like, I'm exhausted. Yeah, this is all in addition to an incredibly busy day job. And I've had to step down from various other councils to commit to Access because I can't do it. Not do everything, but I can't. Like I say to my wife, like I can't. Yeah. This won't end. This is it now. This Access Effects is a industry body that means a lot to a lot of people, and yeah, that keeps me going. And again, circles back to what I said at the start. It's about work. It's about what we do. Is that fair?
Yeah, just a bit kind of surprised that somebody would borderline ridicule you for doing what you do. What you do.
Yeah, it's a white male thing, I think, for me, and it happens a lot. Lots of kind of off the cuff comments that I'm seen as this kind of white knight, savior
figure. Crazy. It's crazy.
And it just does my head in because I'm not in it for that. God, why?
Yeah.
It's kind of ugly to think that I would think of myself like that. Honestly, it makes me feel a bit sick.
And it's gone back to what I've told you before, as something myself and Anne have said, is that we, as coming from this community, as coming from the Black community, we can see the ones who actually do give a crap. We see the ones, and we see the ones that are genuine and everything else. And those are the people that we would support, because we're like, okay, they get it, you're woke, whatever, etc. You guys get it. It's not about you, it's about doing the work. But it's not everyone is like that. But so it's very interesting to hear on your side that people can actually ridicule you or feel so bad about themselves that they will come up with all these passive aggressive comments. I'm just like, wow, deep.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You just crack on, don't you? I mean,
it
comes back to what I said at the start of the answer. My very long-winded answer is stop worrying about what people think about you, because it's keep me awake at night. And the work is much more rewarding than some, off-the-cuff comment on a lift that means zero. I didn't even get offended by it, but it just tickled me a bit.
I also think I think that plays in quite well to what cultures are like, though, and what company cultures are like, and what people are fighting. Because if this is the kind of response that Simon's getting publicly and openly, you can imagine what's been said behind closed doors.
Exactly.
Totally.
Like if you look at any sort of initiative underneath a branded page, and especially I can't speak for other countries, but I'm talking about things I've seen in the UK, you'll see the outrage on the comments. It's frightening. I remember I showed you one for Sainsbury's recently. Sainsbury's post about how they're going to try and increase their black employees and in senior leadership, and the comments were just insane. Like, and it's not as if you scroll down. It's like the first. it's just So Simon, again, it's not to applaud, but it's respected and it's appreciated. And
it is 100%. Amy?
So my advice to any potential allies out there, or ones that are worried right now, is it's okay to make mistakes. Making mistakes means you're still turning up, and I think everyone is so afraid right now of saying the wrong thing, of doing the wrong thing, of putting the wrong thing on your social media. And you know what? If you do the wrong thing, if you say the wrong thing, just apologize. It's no different to anything else in life. You don't wade into every situation thinking, what if I do it wrong? So don't treat this any differently. And actually, that's one of the real ways that human beings do build a connection is, oh God, do you remember that time when you've built that connection with someone because you've messed up, and because you could own that mistake and apologize and laugh at yourself and move and learn from it and move forward. So I think this whole notion that making mistakes means you're a bad person is a nonsense. It doesn't mean you're a bad person at all. It just means you messed up, and we all mess up all the time. And it's not the position of an ally to sit there in 100% perfect spot and tell everyone else how to do things anyway. So no one expects you to be perfect. I think you guys have all said that very eloquently. You just expect us to show up and to want to help and collaborate and provide support, open doors, whatever it is you need. That's all you expect us to do. You don't expect us to be perfect.
It's true. I think it's just people are scared of being savaged on social media. It's a deeply unpleasant experience when it happens. But I think you can have it kind of mitigated if you kind of reach out and ask for advice beforehand. It's something that Simon does quite a bit. Be like, Nene, what do you think about this? Or be like, oh, okay, Anne, what do you think about this? Which is really good, because it comes from a place of humility, basically, and saying that, okay, I don't know it all, basically. I don't know it all. And just like if I didn't know it all about a program or whatnot, I'll go and get help. So this is exactly the same kind of like scenario. I think people make mistakes when they just assume that this is the right thing to do based on their particular experiences, and off they go with something crazy, Yeah. And anything else to add? Because we are out of time, as it were. Out of time.
I mean, this has been such a rich conversation. And I think, just to echo, as much as you guys are our allies, we are your allies as well. Allyship is a two-way thing, is a two-way relationship. And I hope that, the work that we're doing and this sort of even though the message happening is coming from, you know, something tragic that happened, I really hope that it just continues to build. And if at the end of this, we can change one company, one sector, you know, one person, I think we would have succeeded. And we're doing that now, but I really hope this continues to just build. So I just wanted to say thank you both, really. I mean, then it's going to wrap up, but thank you both for showing up. You know, we'll show up for you guys. And let's continue doing the work and getting shit done.
Just to be clear, Anne, you are showing up because Anne is our newest Access VFX board member. So there we go. Anne is showing up.
Excellent.
Can I just do one shout out? I just wanted to shout out with Stripes as well, because, you know, Nana, you were talking about obviously when we first met back in the day and we connected. I remember you used to, whenever I used to call Nana, she'd always say, "You're doing bits," and I almost thought to get that reassurance. But you know, when we first connected with Stripes way back in March 2018, again, you talk about when somebody's real and authentic. I mean, I've always had that working with Real Stripes, and that's why we've done so many great events with your team, and we'll continue to do so. And that's why Nene sits on the Access VFX board as well. So just wanted to kind of put that out there because it is your pod. And
thank you. Yeah, see, there you go. In motion.
Doing bits.
Oh dear. Sometimes when I say that around some of my younger mentees, they're like, Nene? But anyway, I just want to say again, thank you so much to co-host Anne and Hayden, and obviously thank you Simon and Amy again for showing up and for sharing your pieces. We really do appreciate it. Is there any? Do you want to let us know any place you'd like to contact people to contact you? Access VFX, Amy Framestore, anything like that, and then we'll just wrap up.
Cool. I'll throw in the mentoring program that Amy mentioned. So it's www.accessvfx.org/mentors. So it's accessvfx.org/mentors, and it's free to sign up. It takes 10 minutes, whether you're mentee or mentor, and you can mentor people broadly, or you can mentor people around a particular discipline, or you can mentor people like you. So from different ethnically diverse backgrounds, LGBT, women, men. It's completely tailored to your needs, and that goes the other way for the mentees as well. And I'll shout out the www.summerofanimation.com, so the current program that we've got running as well.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention, because I saw Bimpe on there talking about concept art. It was so cool. It's so cool. Amy, anywhere we could contact you? Are you on Twitter or LinkedIn?
I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, LinkedIn's always the best way to get hold of me.
No worries. So once again, thank you guys. Thank you. And we'll see you next time.
Yes. Thanks all.
And wraps.